There is a strange peace that comes with the sea. Its rhythmic rise and fall had always spoken to something deeper in me. Something stable, predictable, and ancient. Unlike people. Unlike love. Unlike marriage. I had always believed that a man who builds his life with discipline and devotion will receive loyalty in return. I believed that love, when nurtured sincerely, would bloom into something enduring. For 5 years, I lived in the comfort of that belief. And for 5 years, I poured my soul into a marriage that, unbeknownst to me, had become a theater of deceit. My name is Joseph. I am a maritime engineer. I live by tide charts, pressure gauges, engine schematics, and safety drills. 2 weeks onshore, 2 weeks offshore. That was the rhythm of my life. A rhythm I thought my wife, Amoka, understood when she said I do. We had a home in Port Harcourt, a quiet, well-kept duplex in the center of the city. Amoka loved the house, especially the backyard with its flowering hibiscus and the polished kitchen I had renovated just for her. I spared no effort to give her comfort. She, in turn, gave me smiles, sweet farewells when I left for work, and kisses on my return. At least, that's what I thought. I remember the last time I looked into her eyes with complete trust. It was a Sunday morning in March. The soft rays of sunlight poured in through the bedroom curtains. She was still in bed, one hand curled beneath her cheek, the other resting gently on my chest. I stroked her hair and whispered, "I'll be back before you miss me." She smiled drowsily. "Just don't stay too long this time." "I never do," I replied. I kissed her forehead, got dressed, and drove to the port with the same calmness that had followed me for years. There was no reason to suspect that anything in my life was amiss. But life has a way of slipping hints through the cracks. Subtle signs. Words spoken with hesitation. Eyes that avoid yours. Calls that are ended too quickly. Still, I was blind. It began with a neighbor, Mr. Harrison. An elderly man who occupied the next building beside ours with his wife and grandchild. He called me aside one evening just after I returned from a 2-week trip. His face bore the burden of knowing something unpleasant. "Joseph, please forgive me for bringing this up," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "You are a man, and I believe you deserve to know what happens in your house when you are not around." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" He looked away, his voice dropping. "Your wife? She often has a man over. Not just once. Often. Why you're offshore?" I stared at him for a long time. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I let out a short laugh, a hollow one, forced and awkward. "Sir, are you sure of what you're saying?" I asked. "I wouldn't speak if I wasn't," he replied. "Sometimes, he comes late at night. Leaves early in the morning." I thought perhaps it was a cousin, but I raised my hand to stop him. I didn't want to hear more. I thanked him and walked back inside. My steps were steady, but my heart was not. Inside, Amoka greeted me with a warm smile. She was wearing one of my shirts, the one she always said made her feel closer to me. She leaned in to kiss me, but my mind was adrift. The seed of doubt had been planted. That night, I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling, questioning myself. Questioning her. Questioning the integrity of a marriage I had given everything to protect. Was it possible? Could she really be betraying me like that? I thought of our plans, our prayers, the doctor's appointments when we had tried, unsuccessfully, to conceive. I had always assumed the problem lay with me. Perhaps it still did. But even that vulnerability, I had shared with her, trusting her support, her understanding. What if it had all been a lie? I needed the truth. Not rumors. Not speculation. Evidence. So, I did something I never imagined I would do. I installed a camera. It was discreet. Hidden. Motion sensitive. Placed at the corner of the bedroom bookshelf and another in the sitting room. 2 days later, I told her I was heading back to work early, citing an urgent vessel inspection that would take a couple of days. She packed my bags, gave me a peck on the cheek, and told me to stay safe. I left the house as expected. But I did not go offshore. I booked a short stay in a serviced apartment across town. My phone was off. My heart was in knots. And for the next few days, I monitored everything. What I saw shattered me. Amoka did not wait long. The evening of my departure, she had invited him over. He was tall, bald-headed, and familiar. His face stirred a memory I couldn't place until I dug further. He is her ex. The one she had cried over years ago when we first met. The one she swore had hurt her beyond repair. He was in my house. Sitting on my couch. Laughing in my kitchen. Making love to my wife in our bed. There are no words strong enough to capture the pain of watching the woman you adore undress her loyalty for another man. I watched it all in silence. Not because I had no words, but because there was too much noise inside me. Too many emotions warring: rage, sorrow, humiliation, disbelief. Still, I waited. I watched again the next night. And the one after that. It was not a mistake. It was not a moment of weakness. It was a pattern. A life she had built around my absence. I have always believed that betrayal does not begin with a single act. It begins in silence, deep, deliberate silence. A woman does not betray her husband the day she opens her arms to another man. No, betrayal begins with the moment she closes her heart to the one who gave her his. Each day, I woke up in that serviced apartment with a heaviness in my chest that no amount of sleep could relieve. The images from the camera played in my head like a haunting theater reel. My mind, once a place of calm and logic, had become a battlefield of memories and emotions. She had lied with ease, slept with him shamelessly, walked around our home like nothing was broken. I had to remind myself not to cry, not because I was too strong to cry, but because I needed clarity. Clarity for what I was about to do. This was not a situation I could confront impulsively. No. I needed to be methodical, surgical. I needed to act like an engineer does at sea: observe, analyze, repair, or discard. In this case, I chose to discard. But not before exposing everything. After a few days, I returned home. She welcomed me with a warm embrace, pretending like nothing was out of place. "You came back early," she said, surprised. "I thought you were meant to be offshore for the next 2 weeks." "The inspection didn't take so much time like I thought," I replied calmly. She nodded and smiled. "I've missed you." I stared at her then, deeply. The way one looks at a stranger wearing a familiar mask. Her eyes were warm, her smile tender. It was almost perfect, except now I knew it was all a performance. A well-rehearsed lie. I slept beside her that night, pretending to be tired. She reached for me, but I turned away slowly, murmuring something about stress. I could feel her confusion behind me, perhaps even a flicker of guilt. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Over the next few days, I observed her more closely. Every word, every expression, every movement. I noticed how quickly she would retreat to the bathroom to answer her phone. How she would delete her call logs. How her mood would change when she received a message. I pretended to be present, but my soul had checked out. I was a shadow in my own home, watching, recording, waiting. When she left to visit her friend one afternoon, I sat in the study with my laptop and watched all the footage again. It was now a digital graveyard of my marriage, video files named by date, each one darker than the last. I backed them up onto a flash drive. Then another. I kept one in my car, another in a safety box at the bank, and one with my lawyer friend, Daniel, under the guise of work documents. I made sure that no matter what happened, the truth would survive. Later that week, I went further. I traced the man, Amoka's ex. His name was Emmanuel. A former university lover, married, with 2 children and a wife who ran a private school. I found his phone number, his social media accounts, and the registration details of his Toyota Camry, the very car that had become a regular guest in my compound while I was offshore. He was a man who had no fear, no restraint, no honor. But it wasn't enough to know what he had done. I needed to know how far this had gone. Was he just a passing fantasy, or had Amoka anchored herself to him emotionally? Had she told him about me? About our struggles to conceive? About the sacrifices I had made to give her comfort? So, I dug deeper. I had cloned her WhatsApp earlier that week and monitored their messages. She didn't save his number. So I took my time and went through every chat till I found his. And there it was. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Joseph is always around. I wish we could just be together fully. I'm so sorry I had to take it out again. I just couldn't bear having his child. Every time I sleep beside him, I feel like a fraud. You're the one I love. Always have. Always will. Those words bled from the screen. I felt like I was drowning. Each message was a fresh wound, each line a betrayal carved into my soul. I clenched my jaw and turned off the laptop. My hands were trembling. My vision was blurred. She hadn't merely betrayed me physically, she had betrayed me emotionally, spiritually, and maternally. She had killed our unborn children to keep her affair alive. She had given her body and her womb to a man who had already built a life elsewhere. This was no ordinary betrayal. This was desecration. That night, I walked past her in the hallway. She reached out to touch my arm, but I pulled away gently. "You've been distant," she said, her voice soft. "I've just had a lot on my mind," I replied. "About work?" "Yes. Work." I could see it now, the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She felt the shift. She could sense the change in the air. But she did not know what I had discovered. And I would keep it that way for now. I slept in the guest room that night, claiming fatigue. She did not insist. And I did not explain. The next morning, I drove to the Ministry of Lands and Housing with the original documents of our house. It had been in my name alone since purchase. I had wanted to add her name later, but the papers had remained untouched. A divine accident. I listed the property through a discreet agent, one who dealt with high-value transactions under confidentiality. I told him I needed a swift, quiet sale. The price was attractive. Within 5 days, a buyer was found. Payment would be made in full. The sea had always been my second home. Its silence, its unpredictability, its deceptive calm, all those elements mirrored my life now. But for the first time in my career, I wasn't heading offshore. Instead, I entered a different kind of deep, one far more treacherous than ocean waters. On a quiet Thursday morning, I packed a single travel bag and told Amoka I was due for a classified engineering project. No phones allowed. No communication until I'm back. I looked into her eyes as I said it, waiting to see even a flicker of guilt. but there was nothing. She kissed me, smiled, and said, "Be safe, my love." Love. What a desecrated word. I walked away with measured steps, knowing that each one was a farewell not to a journey, but to a chapter of my life that had quietly bled to death. My car carried me not to the dockyard, but to a new serviced apartment in Port Harcourt GRA, high-rise and secure. There, behind tinted windows, I watched my own life unfold through a screen. With the camera synced to my laptop and phone, every movement in my house would be recorded. Every sound would be archived. 3 days passed in relative silence. Amoka stayed home, called a few friends, and did a video call with her mother. She moved freely, unsuspectingly. She even called me once, leaving a voicemail that said, "I hope the sea is treating you gently, baby." But on the 4th day, the tide shifted. At 6:43 p.m., the gate opened. The camera caught the image of Emmanuel's Toyota Camry as it rolled in, familiar, well-practiced. He stepped out wearing a blue short-sleeved shirt and grey trousers. He walked into my house like he owned it, like it had always been his. Amoka met him at the door. Their embrace was intimate, long, too natural to be new. I watched her take his hand and lead him in. Their laughter echoed through the speakers like a curse. They poured wine. They shared a kiss in my kitchen. They sat on my couch, and planned a weekend getaway. "Your wife won't find out?" Amoka asked, curled against his chest. "That woman doesn't even know where my heart is," he laughed. "You're the one I want?" "What if Joseph finds out?" "Let him. What will he do?" "He's always offshore." "Not always, then you lie like you always do." "You're good at it." I paused the footage. My hand hovered above the mouse, my eyes cold. I had always imagined what betrayal would feel like, sharp, hot, explosive. But this was worse. It was quiet. Surgical. It made me feel hollow. Not like a man in pain, but like a ghost walking the hallways of his own life. The following day, they repeated the ritual. He returned at noon. They ate together, laughed, watched a movie, then retired into my bedroom. I watched from my apartment, every breath shallow. I could not stop the tears this time. They came slowly, not with rage but with resignation. The kind of tears that do not cry out, but rather acknowledge death, the death of trust, of intimacy, of shared dreams. And then came the final nail. The next day, Amoka had a conversation on the phone with her friend, Vivian. Her phone was on speaker, so I heard the whole conversation. "I'm just tired of pretending," she said. "Then leave him, Amoka," Vivian replied. "He's a good man, Vivian. He's not Emmanuel." "You aborted again." "Yes. I had to. If I keep that child, I'm stuck. Emmanuel doesn't want more kids. So you'll just keep lying to Joseph." "I'll stay until I figure out how to live without losing everything." That was it. My heart did not break anew, it fossilized. I had spent years building a life with her, praying for a child, planning our future. And yet, she had reduced me to a placeholder, a benefactor, a man whose absence was more valuable than his presence. She did not deserve the confrontation of anger. She deserved silence. Cold, orchestrated justice. I met with my lawyer, Daniel, the next day. He had known me for years, through school, through our professional paths. He took one look at the files I handed him and whispered, "Jesus, Joseph. This is horrifying." "It's all I needed," I said calmly. "Now I want to be free. But I want to make sure it scars her memory forever." Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "We can send it to her parents." To his wife. "But what about the house?" "Already sold," I replied. "She just doesn't know it yet." His eyes widened. "You really planned this well?" "No," I said, staring out the office window. "I survived her long enough to know how to disappear." 2 days later, everything moved like clockwork. I left copies of the video footage and screenshots in a sealed envelope addressed to Emmanuel's wife. I included a note, "He is not who you think he is. Neither is she." Another package was sent to Amoka's parents, containing all the details, messages, and timelines of her infidelity and terminated pregnancies. And then I called the moving company. I made sure the moving company came the weekend she went away with him. Daniel had recently purchased a house, so the moving company moved everything to the house. I made sure all her clothes were packed in some boxes and left at the front door. Amoka returned home on Monday morning to find boxes at the door and a legal document left for her. The house had been sold. Ownership transferred. She needed to vacate the premises immediately. I watched through the camera as confusion morphed into panic. Immediately, she started calling me. She called my phone 21 times. I didn't pick up. She sent text after text. All I replied was, "Look inside the brown envelope and watch the files I left on the flash drive. It will explain everything." Then I turned the phone off for good. Let Amoka spend her nights wondering how I could have walked away so cleanly. Let Emmanuel's wife confront him with evidence even he couldn't deny. Let her parents grieve the daughter they thought they raised. As for me, I slept. Not because the pain was gone, but because I had finally stopped bleeding. With the help of the agent who sold my house, I was able to quickly buy another house in another highbrow part of Port Harcourt. My new apartment overlooked the Bonny River. It was quieter, cleaner. No memories to haunt me. No shadows of laughter that once echoed falsely. Just silence. Healing silence. The first week in my new house, I moved through it as a man dislodged from his former identity, no longer a husband, no longer anchored by the rhythms of shared routines. The silence of my new apartment was not oppressive, it was surgical. It cut away the remnants of my old life with each breath. I had chosen vengeance, but it was not petty. It had been a scalpel, not a machete. Precise. Calculated. Irrefutable. And yet, even now, beneath the clean linens of a fresh bed and behind the glass walls of my high-rise, I could still feel the tremors. Not of regret, no, I had none, but of profound disillusionment. How do you mourn a woman who was never truly yours? That was the question that gnawed at my soul. But vengeance was not done with me. 3 weeks after I vanished, I received a message from an unknown number. It was Emmanuel's wife. "Thank you, Mr. Joseph." I left him. It was hard, but I could not stay another day. If you ever need a friend who understands betrayal, I am here. It was a gentle message. Clean. Sincere. But it reignited something inside me. Not affection, empathy, perhaps. A mirror reflecting my own shattered reflection. I replied only once. "We are two survivors who walked through the same fire. Heal well." That would be the last message I would send regarding Amoka and Emmanuel. But it was not the last blow they would receive. I had one final act to perform. I had hired a private investigator to look into Emmanuel's life, and what he found within a short period was damning. I knew his workplace. He was a procurement officer for a logistics company in Port Harcourt. From what the private investigator got, I knew that he had been embezzling minor amounts over the last 2 years. It was subtle, clever falsification of vendor receipts, small kickbacks masked as legitimate charges. But my training as an engineer, and more importantly, my access to discreet investigators, gave me an advantage. I compiled a full dossier of what my investigator gave me. Detailed records, screenshots, bank trail. I sent it anonymously to his company's HR director, whose email I got from her LinkedIn profile. A week later, Emmanuel was suspended pending internal investigation. By the end of that month, he was fired. His disgrace was not made public, but it was complete. Amoka, now evicted, humiliated, and without the very man she had sacrificed everything to pursue, was left floating in the wreckage of a life she helped destroy. There would be no confrontation, no angry scenes, no screaming matches or viral text exchanges. I gave her the gift of silence. Because nothing screams louder than a man who chooses to vanish after reclaiming his power. Even in victory, I often sat alone at night staring into the abyss of what could have been. I missed the companionship, the dreams, the vision of a family built on shared love, not concealed betrayal. I missed the woman I thought she was. There is a peculiar loneliness in surviving betrayal. You're not only mourning a person, but also the version of yourself who once believed without question, who loved without condition, who gave without fear. I had become cautious, guarded, wounded in places no MRI could detect. In the months that followed, I began to rebuild not just my environment, but myself. I took up running at dawn when I was onshore, the rhythm of my feet grounding me to the earth. I volunteered once a week at a maritime academy, mentoring young engineers. I started reading novels again. I smiled again, hesitantly, at first. Then more freely. I still remembered everything. But the memories no longer ruled me. One day, as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, I sat by my window and finally accepted the truth: some endings are cruel. But they are necessary doors to better beginnings. And so, I lived, not as the man who was betrayed, but as the man who rose after betrayal. Not as the victim, but as the survivor. Not as Joseph the husband, but Joseph the reborn. If you enjoyed this story, kindly like and share it. Subscribe to this channel and tap on the notification icon to enjoy and get notified when a new story drops every day.